Hi, my name's Carly Reid from CX Today, bringing you all the latest customer experience news from the industry. Now, today we're talking to Jonathan Rosenberg, CTO and Head of AI at Five9. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Kari. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. Thanks for coming along. So, we're here today to discuss with Jonathan a little bit more about AI in CX and how artificial intelligence can benefit customer experience. Now, we're going to get to know Jonathan a little bit better over the course of this exclusive interview. But, Jonathan, for the sake of our viewers, could you perhaps tell us a little bit more about yourself, please?
Sure. Happy to do that, Carly. So, as you mentioned, I'm the CTO and head of AI at Five9, and I've been here about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was the Chief Technology Officer at Cisco Collaboration, and amongst other things, drove their next-gen WebEx platform, as well as actually their AI initiatives that led to the acquisition of companies like MindMeld and WebEx Assistant. And then before that, I was the Chief Technology Officer at Skype, where I also ran their AI team back in the super early days when AI was still like, almost more of a research project. So been working on AI technologies all along and actually came to Five9 because I had like a foundational belief that the entire future of the telecommunications industry was going to be driven by AI, and that we were going to see that first in the contact center. And thus, the contact center was a great place for me to get started and really help drive the industry forward in that direction.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And so, with that in mind, then, Jonathan, let's get down to our questions. So, first one is, how do you think that AI has perhaps paved the way for agent augmentation to service the next generation of omni-channel customers?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we see it's making a huge difference now, and there's really sort of three categories in which AI can be applied to provide agent augmentation. The first of these is sort of what we call pre-call or pre-chat or pre-interaction, where the user is conversing with the AI in order to, without a human in the loop. So it's a human to AI conversation, and that can be for self-service or it can be for routing, meaning the AI is really just collecting information to ultimately guide the user to an agent and do a really good job at it. And then there's, once the user is connected to an agent, we're sort of in call. And here we see the role of AI is to guide agents to help them do a better job meeting the needs of the customer by helping them get information, access to information more quickly, allow them to spend more time on actually empathy and communication, which is the main thing we've hired them for in the contact center. And then the last is post-call, where we look at analytics and reporting and data to understand what's going on inside the contact center. And we've seen huge growth in all three of these areas, actually, and really a lot of exciting stuff going on in the world of the first one, the pre-call area, where we've seen really an explosion of interest in this space that led us to the acquisition of a company called Inference that we bought, I think, like 6-9 months ago, something like that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And how do you think that advancements in AI, I suppose during the pandemic, provided contact center transitions? And could you perhaps give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, pandemic changed everything for everyone, as we all know. I'm sure we're all tired of hearing that lead in, actually. So I can't believe I said it myself. But for the contact center, we saw a bunch of big trends. First, in general, was an acceleration of the move to the cloud. Uh, you know, the contact center, the pandemic led to agents being at home. It led to an increased demand of agents and time from them because everyone was doing everything by online and communications, whether it's voice or chat or email. So just a huge demand spike for contact center agent services. So that a lot of people felt they couldn't even get there without getting to the cloud. So that was the starting point. And the cloud is also really a unnecessary thing for AI. AI really only works in the cloud, and so that sort of has enabled us to do more and more AI technologies. Where AI has really helped is we saw a lot of usage of IVAs, in particular virtual assistants, to help field a massive influx of call volumes. So to give you an example, one of our customers was directly supporting COVID relief. This COVID Clinic is the name of the group. And as you can imagine, there's just a ridiculous amount of inbound calls for people who want to schedule vaccinations and appointments. And by deploying an IVA with them, we were able to field a lot more of those calls and allow people to get their appointments scheduled, which directly helps people. So AI had a direct impact there in helping deal with the pandemic. But across the board, these virtual assistants have helped allow contact centers to scale, and that's a really big deal.
Fantastic. That's brilliant news. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And I suppose, could you tell us a little bit more about hyper migration and the way that AI has played a part in this during the pandemic, please?
Yeah. That's a great question, Corey. And I spoke a little bit about this in the last question, right? Which is that the pandemic generally drove a migration to the cloud. And let me talk about that for a moment too. So I get asked this a lot. Like, it is the case that you don't have to go to the cloud to deal with work from home agents, and obviously plenty did, right? It's not like every single contact center in the world migrated to the cloud in like 2 months, and there was none left of an on-prem contact center. That clearly didn't happen. But when you have an on-prem contact center, it becomes way more complicated, way more difficult. You have to deal with like bandwidth and traffic management of all these remote agents now funneling all their voice back to the premise contact center, VPN access, security and firewall considerations, and late quality of service and voice latency issues. It just all becomes harder. So it's doable, but it's much harder. So we did see a migration that accelerated as a result of the pandemic, and for many of the customers, these are transitions that they were planning to do anyway. These are folks that knew they needed to get to the cloud, and for a lot of folks, this was okay. It's time to really go do it. And if you step back and look at what are the motivations for these customers to migrate their contact centers to the cloud, certainly access to some of these new technologies like AI in the form of IVAs and agent assistance and speech analytics. These things are sort of like really valuable to them, and they're yet another reason on the list of reasons to drive towards a cloud migration. So we saw it help pull customers, and we certainly saw growth in volume in every dimension with the pandemic, and certainly a bunch of that was attributable to AI, in addition to some examples like this COVID clinic where it was directly related. Like, okay, we're using AI to help us deal with the pandemic by literally servicing COVID patients.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And what are your thoughts about AI being used as perhaps a cost-cutting tool and, I suppose instead of practical automation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is a topic that I feel very passionately about. Like all technologies, it's possible to apply them for the good of humanity and maybe the not so good of humanity. And I think if you view AI as, oh, I'm going to use this so I can let go of all my agents and save tons of money in the contact center, you will both be sorely disappointed and you will also result in a terrible experience for your customers. So rather what we think of it as is that you should think about AI as focused first on actually delivering a better experience for your customers, and then the cost savings follow once you do the first thing. But if you start with just like everything I can to throw costs out the door, you're going to probably make wrong decisions. And that's what it's at the end of the day. Listen, like this AI technology, it has limits. It's not perfect. It makes mistakes. I talk about this all the time. Like, AI is not 100% accurate. If you have it do speech recognition or language processing, like no AI system on the planet works 100% of the time, not a single one. And so you have to take these kind of things into consideration, and you don't want to hurt your user experiences and turn your customers away. So we view it as really providing value, and I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of these three phases, especially the first two. So pre-call. If you ask anybody, Carly, and I'll ask you, do you love voice response navigation trees? Do you love them? When you call the contact center, you're like, yes, 1 for support, 2 for sales. I love it. Right? Do you love that?
Well, not too sure, really.
No, everyone hates it, right? It's it's like a running joke. Like everybody did that. So we actually have an opportunity to solve that problem. Like the experience I would like is I call a contact center and it answers the phone and says, "Thank you, Jonathan, for calling. How can I help you today?" And I say something like, "Yeah, I got this product in the mail and it was broken when it arrived, and I need to, the website said I have to call to initiate a return." And it says, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Let me transfer you to an agent who can process your return swiftly." And then I'm on the phone with an agent. That would be brilliant. Great experience for a user. And interestingly, that's a case where we're not actually even getting rid of the agent. We have a complicated use case here. But what we're doing is we're using the AI to direct the call to the agent quickly. And this actually saves the contact center money because a lot of time is wasted transferring calls between departments and agents because they collected the wrong information. So we save some money here, and we dramatically improve the user experience, right? And another example, of course, is self-service, right? Where if you think about it from the perspective of user experience, these days everyone is used to having like a Siri or an Alexa or some kind of or Google Home in their house, and they've gotten used to this like instant access to knowledge and information. One question, instant answer, right? And so we can now with IVAs, we can provide that kind of experience, not just for like asking who was the actor in that movie or is such and such dead, which I do. Maybe it's weird, Carly, but I'm watching a TV show or a movie from the 80s. I'm like, oh, is that guy still alive? I ask Alexa if they're dead. Anyway, my thing. So, we have this opportunity to bring that type of like instant access to data to the contact center. So again, I'd like to be able to say, hey, call up the contact center and say, has my order shipped yet? Or, is this product in stock? Right? These are kind of questions that people today spend a long time on the phone, and they're getting used to instant access to data. Let's deliver it to them. And that is a huge win, right? Great improvement in customer experience and a huge reduction in cost. And the same goes even for agent assistance. So we're big fans of that. We've released our agent assist application. It's been doing great. We just released our first customer case study, actually, and they got instant ROI from this product. But what's fascinating about it is they did it by also helping customers. Because what happened is that people wait in queue forever because agents are busy doing work, tedious work, like making after call notes, right? And what we did is we applied our AI to take the laborious task of summarizing the call after the call is done. We automate that process with an AI, and therefore we free up the agents to actually handle calls better, and therefore queue wait times went down. So customers win, the contact center wins, everybody wins. And so, you have to think of it as a customer experience improvement that sort of brings your cost savings along for the ride. And when you do that, you will have a winning AI strategy.
Fantastic. Thank you. Brilliant answer, Jonathan. And I suppose that answer actually leads into my next question, sort of turning it on its head a little bit. But do you think that businesses, I suppose lately, have made a habit of leaning too much on AI? And do you think this could be a mistake?
Yeah. So I don't think we're there yet, Carly. I think we're still in the early stages of the deployment of AI technologies into the contact center. So I don't think they're leading on it too much yet, but I think there's a risk, right? And that's sort of what I'm speaking to. And we see there's historical evidence for this. So the IVR itself is a great example of a technology that was sort of maybe taken a little bit too far, right? And before IVRs, remember, you call and you just wait in queue, and then someone had this idea of like, oh, we can collect information from the keypad and we can service the customer needs, and we don't need to connect them to the agent, and yay, that's going to be great. And we saw huge excitement about this technology and massive deployment of it. But in the end, like, has IVRs like replaced the need for agents? Did they all get cost reduced out? No, absolutely not. In fact, in many cases, it ended up with increase in user frustration, and anyway, they still end up connecting to an agent. And that's this almost like cultural meme about, press 0 for agent, 0, 0, 0. Like, it didn't, so like nobody wins if you take it too far. Now, obviously, there are cases where we have had great, highly successful IVRs that do navigate users in the right way and provide them with great and quick information. But not enough. They should all be like that. So I fear there's going to be an over reaction in some ways, but we're not there yet. Where if anything, we're still underutilizing these technologies. And my belief is that like 100% of IVRs should start with an AI that says, "How can I help you today?" Even if you always connect them directly to an agent, just that way of greeting and understanding what the customer wants is a very solvable problem in AI, very reliable, can work really well, low penalties if you get routed to the wrong agent a couple times, no big deal. And it's a dramatic improvement for customer experience. So there, where like it should be every IVR. Like in 5 years, Carly, if I call an IVR and I get press 1 for sales, 2 for support, I'm gonna hang up. So, so call to action for all you guys running contact centers. You should be seriously looking at IVAs at least for this sort of segmentation or routing function, and then the right levels of self-service, and then deploying agent assist to help agents out. So that's where you got to go.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here first on CX Today, so there you are. And last question, Jonathan, what do you think the future of the contact center looks like?
Yeah. So I've talked a little bit about that through many of these questions. So to summarize what the future of the contact center looks like, first, it's in the cloud. Like seriously, guys, it's you can't get any of this niceness if you're on-prem. So it's going to be cloud-based contact centers. It's going to see AI deployed to provide this concierge or greeting experience for 100% of calls. It's going to be combined and chats. It's obviously omni-channel. It almost goes without saying. It uses AI for self-service for cases that are really good, common use cases, not too complicated, that can be handled by an agent. It's combined with agent assistance for every agent so that all these tedious tasks are taken off their shoulders and they can focus on empathy and human connection, which is ultimately what people really want when they're calling up the contact center. And it's going to be supported by agents that are, a lot of them, working from home, right? And so we'll see all kind of suites of tools out there for helping contact centers manage a highly distributed, work from home, globally available workforce. So big changes ahead, exciting times for the contact center.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Now, sadly, that's all we have time for today. Special thanks to Jonathan Rosenberg from Five9 for joining us. Thank you again, Jonathan. It was really lovely to speak to you today. Thank you. Now, if you enjoyed our exclusive interview with Jonathan from Five9, then please do share our video on social media. It's always greatly appreciated when you do so, and do subscribe to our channel as well. So, from myself and Jonathan, that's it from us. I'm Carly Reid from CX Today. Thank you for watching.